And welcome. I'm Kate Walker, and this is the Step It Up training devoted to mistakes in private practice. Every month I go through my inbox, which isn't really my inbox. I go on social media threads. I stalk other people's communities on counseling in social media. I don't like stalk their communities. That would be weird. I go and I listen and I watch to see what counselors are struggling with. And that helps me to design trainings specific to your needs, right? If you're overwhelmed, if you're confused, if you feel like you're breaking a rule and you have bad information, that's what I'm here for. I take a lot of time to really try to understand the rules. I have been a liaison to the LPC board for the Texas Association for Counselor Education and Supervision. I was the president of that organization for a time, and I love the rules. So I'm always going to do my very, very best to give you the most up-to-date information. And for Step It Up community members, that's you guys, even if you're watching this on replay or you're watching it as part of your Kate Walker Training Step It Up profile. Again, I'm going to keep these videos nice and fresh for you, lots of new information, so you're not learning old stuff and doing things in the old way that might get you in trouble. So if you're live, welcome. If you're not, if you're watching it on a replay, I'm so glad you're here. I am going to check over here to my left to see if I get any comments. It's always delayed a little bit, but I'm going to do my very best to see what I can get going here for you guys. So let's see. I did get a message though. Hold on. I'm actually adding someone to the group. There we go. All right, so let's get to it. August practice mistakes. What you're going to get today is information about counseling clients across state lines. You're going to get information about associates and insurance. We're going to talk about that old W-2 versus 1099 dilemma. And we're also going to talk about the term independent versus business owners. I'm Kate Walker. This is for the Step It Up community, and this the information coming your way in just a second hopefully is the latest and greatest and will help you in your practice. All right, so let's talk about counseling clients across state lines. So it can happen a couple of ways, right? You are in Texas and you're licensed in Texas, and your client decides to go on vacation, oh, I don't know, for a month in Maine, and they're going to live in their camper, right? So you want to continue counseling that person, but now that they're in Maine, they are protected by Maine laws, right? So you know this, like if you go to Maine and they don't have a right turn on red and you turn right on red and the cop comes and he's like, hey, you can't turn right on red because in Maine, we don't do that, right? So we're aware we live in a republic where each state gets to make their own laws to protect their citizens. It's funny because I was actually staying at a campsite on the border of Maine and New Hampshire, and it's very different. Like in Maine, you couldn't get a plastic bag at the grocery store, which I like. I don't like plastic bags, but when you went to New Hampshire, heck yeah, give me 10 plastic bags, right? You go to New Hampshire and it says very clearly, don't bring your firewood back into Maine because of the bugs. New Hampshire is live free or die. Maine is like, hey, we're glad you're here. So the personalities of the states are very, very different. But when you are in a state, you must follow their laws. Now, here's where it gets weird. When you're counseling and your feet are on the ground in Texas and you are licensed in Texas, but your client's feet are on the ground in Maine, well, then if you counsel them there, you in essence are providing services in Maine. Now, I recognize there are one or two states that do not see it that way, and that's okay, right? Welcome to the group, Carrie. Just keep in mind that I'm recording, and if you don't want your camera or your microphone on, that's okay too, okay? So when you're in Maine, right, you're the client, you're protected by Maine laws. If you are counseling a client in Maine, Maine considers you to also be in Maine, even though your feet are on the ground in Texas. All right. So perfectly clear, right? Because like I said, there are some great groups out there, Online Therapists of Texas. There's a group, the traveling therapists that I've gotten to know and like very, very well. There are lots of good information, especially traveling internationally. So long and short of it is, where your client's feet are is generally where counseling is occurring. And if you are not licensed where your client's feet are, always a good idea, just check with the state and see what their rules are. Like I said, most states are going to consider counseling happening where the client's feet are. Now switch that, and it's kind of cool, because if you, counselor, are in Maine, but your client's feet are on the ground in Texas and you're licensed in Texas, well, that's pretty cool, because Texas says, oh, yeah, your client's in Texas, you're licensed in Texas, you're good to go, right? So you can counsel that client even if you're sitting in a camper in Maine. Now, not all states are like that, but as I said, they're more the exception. Now, when you think internationally or on FOBs or forward operating bases with the military, it's a good idea to just check and see. So if you're, for instance, wanting to counsel from a country where there are no licensing laws, then there really is no jurisdiction, right? You just, maybe there's a professional organization, always go with best practices. You see, that brings us to the realm of the ethical decision-making model, which, you know, as a professional, the rules can only take us so far, right? Laws, federal laws, state laws. We always have to make the best decision based on our expertise. And that means you must have a working ethical decision-making model, right? Because I can't be in your shoes if you know that your client who's just spending a weekend in Manhattan all of a sudden is having a psychotic break, right? I don't know what I would do in your shoes. I can tell you what the consequences might be. And that's really what happens in our profession. Everything's fine until it's not. Right? Until someone decides they want to file a complaint. So it's that old, are you going to operate out of fear? Are you going to operate out of, I don't know, I can't think of the right word. I always think of that character House, you know, the doctor who was like kind of a little bit of a rogue, but he always like cured the patient. Well, we don't have that, but we do have ethical decision-making models. We have groups like this where you could ask questions and get great consultation. If you're a supervisor, you can join one of the Texas Supervisor Training monthly consultation groups. Always have a tribe or someone you can consult with when you're making these big decisions, right? So to sum up the situation of counseling across state lines, generally where your client's feet are is where counseling is happening. So you need to be licensed where your client is, except for, I think, 1 or 2 states, and I can't think of them off the top of my head. If they're going away for the weekend, if they're going away for college, if they're just going on a business trip, could that be defendable or defensible? Maybe, right? But that's for you and your malpractice insurance and your ethical decision-making model to decide, right? Ultimately, you have to make the decision, and whatever decision you make, I'm sure is going to be amazing, because you're amazing and you make good decisions, and because you're an ethical counselor and you have your client's best interests at heart. So I'm going to pause for a second. Are there any questions about counseling across state lines? And I'm going to be looking here at the camera, and I'm going to be looking over here at the chat. All right, then I am going to keep going. Let's talk about insurance. Right? I love to use it, don't like to be credentialed by it. So a lot of the questions that I see regarding insurance is surrounding associates. So I want you to imagine there's a difference. Well, you don't have to imagine because it's real. We have laws, right? State laws governing our license, BHEC, LPC, LMFT. We have federal laws governing things like privacy, right? And so those things come with very, very clear rules and consequences. And right now, I don't know of any law, state or federal, that prohibits an associate, an LPC or associate or an LMFT associate from being paneled on insurance. Now, I'm going to use that term carefully because I know a lot of times we'll see take insurance, right? I think that's kind of a misnomer. You are either paneled on insurance and you're an in-network provider, or you are not, right? That would make you an out-of-network provider. So insurance, and I'm going to talk about the gray area in just a second. Insurance companies, they're private corporations. They can make whatever rules they want. If they want to panel my husband to take, insurance and hire him to do, I mean, they can do that, right? Because that's what private companies do. They're free to panel whomever they like. And remember, being paneled is sort of like working for the insurance company. You're a 1099. I think you even have to fill out information so they can 1099 you at the end of the year, right? Money goes to them. They pay you if you're paneled on their insurance, if they hire you to be one of their in-network providers, okay? So these contracts, the contract that you would sign in order to be paneled would have special considerations for other people in your office. If you had a skills trainer, a QMHP, I don't know, an audiologist, a massage therapist, acupuncturist, I don't know, right? You would have to negotiate with that insurance company and see if they also paid for those services, right? It has to do with the contract. It has to do with the company. So physicians often, right, they'll have a PA or they'll have a nurse practitioner, right? You go to HEB and you have an earache, the nurse practitioner sees you and they can bill your insurance. Well, that's because of the contract they have with their over physician. I don't know what the term is. Over physician sounds like overlord, but and who the contract is with, right? The type of insurance and what the fine print says. Now, for LPC associates, I have heard tell that there are certain insurance companies that will panel them. They will hire the LPC associates. Not so sure about LMFT associates. And it goes through the supervisor, right? So that's totally up to that private corporation, the insurance company. As I mentioned before, I'm not aware of any law, state law prohibiting an LPC or an LMFT associate from being paneled by an insurance company. Now, here's where the gray comes in. We have Medicare and Medicaid, which are federally funded. So they're kind of that hybrid, the best of both worlds. I don't know what we'd call that. But right now, Medicare doesn't pay any LPC, right? They don't hire LPCs as far as I know. Federally, it's the federal insurance, right? There's no LPC that can be paneled with Medicare at this time. And so that's a kind of a hybrid legal private thing, right? Medicaid, LPCs can be paneled with Medicaid. I hope I'm saying this right. I hope it's not reversed. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But as of right now, I'm not aware of Medicaid paneling LPC associates, and that is having to do with some of the wording that we have had in the past with our licensing laws. For example, we used to call the LPC associate license a temporary license. We used to call LPC associates LPC interns. Both of that, those terms, that language, really didn't make it easy for an insurance company to panel them, right? Temporary license, well, I'm not going to hire them. Their license is going to go away. Or intern, no, we don't hire interns, right? So yes, the language has something to do with whether or not the insurance will panel them. So this is a place for advocacy, because can you imagine if Medicaid would allow LPC associates to bill for services? Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing for rural Texas, right? We would get the providers out there. We would fill those gaping holes in the desert that is mental health providing in rural Texas, and we could make such a difference. So if you aren't involved in TCA, TAMFT, AAMFT, ACA, whatever professional organization floats your boat, it's so important to advocate so that we can get these folks paneled, LPC associates. But as I mentioned before, there is no law prohibiting them from getting paneled. And so let's talk about the super bill for just a moment, right? A super bill is really just a glorified receipt, right? I hand this to my clients who then can submit it. And if they have a good relationship with their insurance company and out-of-network providers, I'm sorry, not their insurance, yes, their insurance company, then they might be reimbursed. Not the provider, the client, right? So I like super bills for everybody and everything because it's so transparent. And I want to talk to LPC associates for just a second. It's a way for you to make sure that your name is on the line as the provider, right? Because there is such an issue with that being confused or not transparent. And an associate who finds out later that their name was never on the line and somebody was putting their name there because they're paneled and the associate isn't. And so the insurance company is paying this money and it's a mess and it's illegal. So super bill is a super way of making sure that you put your name as the provider, you have the proper CPT code, the proper diagnosis code. You can have your tax ID, your NPI, your EIN, whatever it is that you use as an identifier. I put everything, and you just hand it to the client. And now it's between the client and the insurance company. I'm out of the loop. My work is done. I have been paid. And now as the out-of-network provider, I can just hope that they get paid. And if they do, I can even put that on my website. Hey, look, with this insurance company, you can get reimbursed. I'm an out-of-network provider, but that's another video. We'll talk about that another time. All right. So any questions about associates and insurance? And I'm looking here. I'm looking over here, looking for questions. All right. Speak now or ever hold your peace, because then this will be a replay and you can't ask me. Well, you can always tag me. You can always tag me. All right. Now let's talk about W-2 versus 1099. All right. Now the word that's new is the word independent, right? Independent was not defined in the definitions prior to February 2022. Very weird, because we all know, I mean, it's a word, right? It was used in the language, but where the problem is, we practitioners, whatever, use that independent word interchangeably with self-employed, right? They're not the same. Independent means you don't need supervision anymore. So self-employed means, hey, you can own a business. And in this country, anybody can own a business. So they clashed because back in the day, state law said that LPC associates couldn't own a business. Well, yeah, they can. Everybody can. No, I mean, that's why we live in this country, right? You can do that. But LPC associates cannot be independent. All right, so we clear? Now, for the 1099 W-2 thing, here's what you need to do. Here's your homework. You're going to go Google 1099 criteria, right? You'll be taken to the IRS website and you will see the criteria that indicate that someone is eligible to be an independent contractor. There's that word again, right? Independent contractor is now used in a different way. So for example, if I hire someone to come paint my fence and they own Joe's Painting Shack, right? I'm hiring them. They own their own business. They are an independent contractor. Okay. And if they meet all 6 or 7 or 8 of those criteria, good to go. You with me? All right. If I hire an LPC associate, not my LPC associate, not my supervisee, but just an LPC associate out there, they cannot be independent. Remember why? Because they need supervision, but they can be an independent contractor because they will meet the criteria for independent contractor on the IRS website. And I'm not going to go through that. That's your homework. You go look that up. So you with me? An LPC associate, LMFT associate, they cannot be independent practitioners because they need supervision. But they can be independent contractors if they meet the criteria, on the IRS website. Now, here's the gray, right? When might they not meet the criteria according to the IRS website? If you're a supervisor and you can hear me right now, it's if you hire your own associate. If you hire your own associate, they won't meet the criteria, one or at least one of the criteria of 1099 independent contractor. All right. That's easy though. Then you just hire them as a W-2. No, it's not as bad as you think. You can find payroll services out there with a push of a button that can take care of all that pesky tax stuff. So if you get it wrong and you hire your LPC associate and get audited by the Texas Workforce Commission, you would be responsible for back taxes and all kinds of stuff and headaches. Not pretty. All right. So let's review. LPC defined independent in the state laws governing the license. Wonderful. Now we know that means independent. You don't need supervision anymore. Well, IRS over here says, hey, we've got a definition of independent too. Independent contractor, 6 criteria, 7, 8, I don't know. You meet all of those, you can be independent. An independent contractor. LPC associates can meet the criteria for IRS independent contractors. LP associates cannot meet the criteria of independent for the LPC licensing board. Ditto LMFT. All right. So take a deep breath, right? That's what I had for you today. Those are the common mistakes I've heard in August. Like I said, I think it's because people are traveling, and I think it's because we still have a lot of folks who are starting up their private practice. And you guys know, if you go to Kate Walker Training and look at your profile, you'll see the Start Here module. I have so many resources for you. It's what you pay for. You get these resources in the Step It Up resources, the one Start Here, that's the name of the module. And if you open that, you're going to see a bunch of stuff from these trainings to templates and paperwork. And my most exciting, wonderful recent ad, I just put in some coupons, and one of them is for the Badass Basics course starting September 1st. Now, the thing about the Badass Basics course, how is it different from Step It Up? Step It Up is kind of like a day at Luby's, right? It's kind of like, I'm going to go to the buffet. I'm going to pick what I want. Maybe it's just vegetable night. I don't feel like eating meat. Maybe it's just dessert night. I'm going to get Jell-O and that's all, right? You pick and choose. With Badass Basics, it's really great for those who don't know what they don't know. They don't know where to start. Right? So it's like a 6-course meal. No, you don't have to show up in class every night. No, you don't have to be at the same place at the same time. It's self-paced and it's dripped. So the content week 1, then week 2 content is dripped. Then week 3 content opens. At the end of it, it's all yours. All the videos, all the transcripts, everything is yours in one place. But you had it released to you very gradually with office hours with me in between. So you had a chance to sort of digest and see what was coming next, right? So again, Step It Up, Luby's, and there's the big buffet. And if you kind of know what you want, you know what to pick, you grab it. Badass Basics, 6-course meal, right? This is course 1, course 2, course 3, right? And I'm talking food metaphor, not like there are 6 courses. There are not 6 courses. It's 6 weeks. But you don't have to show up at a class every night. There's no virtual classroom, only virtual coaching. So every week I will host office hours just like this, where you can ask questions. And Step It Uppers, go to that Start Here course module in your Kate Walker Training profile. You will see an amazing coupon if you're interested in my 6-course meal, Badass Basics. If that's not for you, please tell a friend. I would love it if you got your associates to take this course, because it is an ideal way to prepare those folks for private practice who are brand new to the field, or maybe they've got their private practice, but they just want to tweak it a little bit. All right, I'm about to wrap up. Any questions? Any questions at all? I'm checking my feed over here. I don't see anything typed in. I've got one participant. Carrie, do you have any questions for me? Oh,
yeah, I got a question.
Awesome.
Can you hear me? Okay. So this is not really related to the things that you've talked about today, but
that's okay.
Okay, so if I'm using like psychoeducational materials with a client that I've put together on my own, self-written, they kind of tailor to the approach that I follow.
Yeah.
Strength-based model. Do I have to have a disclaimer in there that says these are not meant to take the place of treatment, but should be used as a part of an overall comprehensive treatment plan? I mean, that's kind of what I think, but I'm like, I don't know if I can write. I have one written, but I don't know if I should go get a lawyer to write it, or if it's not necessary. I don't really know.
That's a great question. So I'm going to say the only time I've heard where you have to have kind of that transparency clause is if you are selling this to your client. But I kind of see where you're coming from, because this is in our code of ethics. If you're LPC 681 code of ethics, right? About the counselor may not act in their best interest at the expense of a client. And so it sounds to me like you have weighed everything. It sounds like you are thinking, okay, I'm going to give this client some resources. I want to explain the pros and the cons, just like in those medication commercials, where they talk real fast about, oh, this may cause this and this and this and this. Oh, you may die, right? And so you're trying to be as transparent as possible. I think that's amazing. I don't necessarily think it would have to be viewed by a lawyer, because Carrie, this is actually the same information that's in your intake paperwork. This is what counseling is. Counseling can be wonderful. It can also cause harm. So that transparency, it's not a guarantee of services. So I like what you're saying. Here's what it is. Here's who wrote it. Here's how you can benefit. But you know what? You don't have to do this, and it's definitely not a guarantee of anything, or I won't require it to continue seeing me as your counselor.
Okay, so if I use it in that setting, in the counselor setting, then I wouldn't necessarily have to have it scrutinized by a lawyer. I mean, I'm still going to make those points. Hey, I have these different pieces that parents can use that go along with some of the struggles that I see you're having. And I want to make those available to you because I think they'd be a good platform for further discussion. But if I use it in a different setting, then I would need to do that.
I think you're
a school-based group or something like.
I think you're hesitating. I think you're hesitating because you wrote it. Carrie, if you were putting out systematic training for effective parenting by, Dinkmeyer, or how to talk so kids will listen, or listen so kids will talk, you'd be like, hey, here are 3 resources. They're all great, but I'm going to work through steps.
Yeah. Okay.
The client can take it or leave it. Right. So
that makes sense.
Validate that you made something really, really good, and validate that your client has free will. And if they don't like it, they can tell you. And your clause only needs probably, I think, 3 sentences. Here's some resources. Here's the one I'm going to use. It might work. It might not. And if we don't use it, we can still be friends, and I will still be your counselor.
We'll still move on. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not the dual relationship kind. I'm talking about counselor client. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Great question though.
Okay. Well, I don't want to ever do any harm. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I want them to try. I think if they tried it, they would see a big benefit from it because it would change their way of thinking. But, on the other hand, you never know.
Carrie, I've been giving resources to my clients for years, and I have some people come back and love it, and some people come back and hate it. And these are things I did not write, right? And when they hate it, we just say, oh, okay, well, let's course correct. right?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
so what I hear you doing that I love though is that you're going through that ethical decision-making model. You're getting consultation. You're going to make the best decision based on the best interest of your client, and look and see what the consequences are and course correct if you need to. I mean, that's a decision-making model in a nutshell. So go you. Good job.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And this was my question from yesterday. So
Oh,
I'm
good.
finally getting, I'm trying to write, you know how it is? I'm trying to write, talk to my virtual assistant, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, work in as much training as possible. So
I
some
hear
days
ya.
are just nuts.
Well, remember, all this stuff will go into your Step It Up profile in Kate Walker Training. So if you miss something, you can always catch it there. Okay.
I'm trying to do that. Thank you
Good.
very much.
All right. See ya. All right, everybody, I am closing for today, and look for this in your Step It Up profile probably next week along with the transcript. Thank you so much for this time together in group coaching. Next week is going to be Nicolette Wax, and she's going to talk to us about SEO. This is pre-recorded, so you can't ask questions, but I'm going to include her information on how to get in touch with her. So I know she'd love it if you reached out, and I'll give you more information about that next week. All right, I'm Dr. Kate Walker. I will see you soon.